Now, viewers, for an in-depth analysis of the latest geostrategic developments, we have been joined by geostrategic expert Dr. Auqaab Alizai. First and foremost, Dr. Alizai, thank you so much for speaking to Pakistan TV. It's always a pleasure to have you and be able to learn from you. Now, just diving straight into this conversation, how are you assessing Pakistan's diplomatic efforts to promote peace, stability, as in the region and beyond?
I think you've just mentioned everything already. I've not got much to say then. But I'll add a little bit to it because you're very comprehensive in this report that you've made. I think Pakistan's been on a trajectory for a while now. This is just one small part of that. And I think it's also in Pakistan's interest that we resolve this crisis as far as we can, because we're literally the only country that's not involved directly in the conflict within the region. And we're the only ones that can have some mediation effort because of the relationship with the United States. The relationship with Iran is very strong. The relationship with other parties, extra-regional parties such as China and other regional parties in the Gulf. So Pakistan has a unique position, which is leveraging as much as it can because of the way it interacts. And as you know, the Chief of Defense Forces, General Asim Munir, is now in Iran and meeting with the leadership of Iran. Now, there was a report I read earlier in Reuters indicating that Trump had made a call specifically to the defense chief to facilitate some form of negotiation, because what's going to happen on D-Day, and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary in the US, has been mentioning this, and there's ramping up on both sides with the verbal attack on each other, which is actually better than having physical strikes and violence. But for the fact of the matter, it leaves a lot of uncertainty and pressure on both sides to conflict with each other. And this is where the problem lies. The problem lies in that they're not giving space for each other to relax a little bit so that there can be some form of negotiation. When you're threatening an opposing side, and the other side tends to give a reprisal, a riposte. And as a result, you're continuing the fight and you're aggravating each other to a form of maybe future escalation anyway. So I think this is where Pakistan's initiative to go to Iran, talk to both sides, initially talking to Trump on the phone and talking to the foreign minister just the day before, and talking immediately in face-to-face negotiations and understanding to come to form some form of resolution, at least back down a little bit on each side. So there could be some standstill, because once these sanctions take effect, there'll be further heightening of tension where Iran may have another riposte, meaning a reprisal, and they may attack those countries that are helping within the sanctions. So regime against Iran. So this just aggravates the situation even further.
Absolutely. Dr. Alizai, you've mentioned the assessment of Pakistan's diplomatic role. What about the role that Pakistan can play in supporting this peaceful and lasting resolution of the Middle East conflict?
Well, it's going to take a long time. It's a gigantic effort. As we've seen, we had the Memorandum of Understanding, which is virtually expired, but we can still get back to that because even the leadership in Iran recognizes that this Memorandum of Understanding is probably the best thing they've ever had, although the hardliners within Iran may not agree. And the US has its hardliners. This way, Pakistan can put pressure on both sides. But how much pressure can they put? I think it's personal contact, like the Chief of Defense Forces going to Iran and talking directly with them, that will play an impact because he's had a word directly with Donald Trump. And that plays a large part in trying to secure some form of concession either side. He may be delivering some words that nobody else knows about because this is top secret and they don't want to divulge things that can be given away. And this is where he can talk directly to the leadership and say, well, this is on the table and maybe they can give something, and vice versa. And it can't happen by any other means unless there's direct talks, at least with a mediator. And this way, Pakistan has been fulfilling its role as much as it can in every step that it can. And every opportunity it's had is taken and tried to fulfill the idea of peace within the region. And as you know, even the mutual defense agreement is expanding with Turkey and maybe further expanding because there are more countries aligning with this. There's talk of other countries coming in, maybe in the future, even Iran. That would resolve the major security dilemma within the region. Remember, China facilitated a detente, facilitated a rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia until recent problems occurred by extra-regional forces, disrupted the whole situation. It's about coming back to that maybe. And it may well be in the offing that they could become part of a future security architecture, which will be conducive. And I look at the rationale behind this, and I look at the rationale behind the formation of NATO. The whole idea of NATO was to keep the Germans down, the Russians out, and consolidate some form of peace. And this is where the EU came in for economic consolidation and interdependence. And look what's happened in Europe. Aside from Russia and Ukraine, what's happened is that they...
Absolutely. I apologize for the interjection, Dr. Alizai. Just, understanding this very briefly, I know this is such a vast topic to delve into, but if we talk about the security challenges in the Middle East, how important is it for regional cooperation in addressing these current security challenges?
I think there's been a large degree of disruption. This was all in the toolkit of what Israel wanted. It wanted disruption. It wanted massive disruption between the different countries in the Gulf, because that would be in its own benefit to advance its own interest. And that's what it's done. And now it's disrupted the whole regional environment. When it was coming towards some form of understanding, you see, this is where external parties come in and destroy things. And who really suffers? It's the regional parties that suffer. There is a potential for this to change. And if something comes out of this after there's some form of resolution and some understanding between Saudi and Iran and the other Gulf countries, if that can actually happen, even the ones that were part and attacked, then there is a potential future for some form of peace and resolution. But it's not going to be easy. And Pakistan has a very difficult task ahead of it. But I think they're coming up to what they need to do. They've taken the bull by the horns and they're wrestling with it very virulently. And they're, I would say, still maintaining their dignity and enhancing themselves in the global community as far as the perceptions are concerned. Overridden perceptions about what happened previously, what Pakistan was viewed on. And you just indicated the economic outlook by Moody's. This has drastically changed everything, and that's going to further increase Pakistan's capability and utilization of opportunities that will come its way. But we still have to commit to this form of security in the region. There's no choice in that.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for providing us with that analysis and that understanding. Again, viewers, this was geostrategic analyst and expert Dr. Auqaab Alizai. Thank you so much for speaking to Pakistan TV and just providing us with this analysis. Now,